right. Hello again, world. My name is Dr. Adam O'Brien, and I am going to be exploring a recent statistics that came out relating to PTSD and making a case for what my work, our work, captures. So I'm going to present that real quick. All right. So this was a recent update to PTSD statistics, and Center for Disease and Control Prevention defines PTSD, which that is, I don't believe that's spelled right. My writing, but whatever. All right, so highlights 6 or 3 in every 50 American adults will have gone through PTSD or post-traumatic stress at some point in their life. Okay. I don't know how that adds up. If the A study showed that 90% or over 90% of people experience trauma. Now, granted, if you look at the questions of the A study, they aren't necessarily asking about only big T trauma. They ask about, as in there, granted, it's for children. But if children have experienced, 90% of children have experienced these things, children become adults. So I find that statistic to be at odds with the A study and or the current conceptualizations of PTSD. Now, I think everybody can experience symptoms of PTSD. And having gone through PTSD, meaning that they have naturally gone through a process of getting by the experience of which doesn't really account for dissociation because there is a delayed onset where, through dissociative means, we protect ourselves and time goes on and maybe it comes back or maybe it becomes so dissociated that it is, one of the things that clients will say is that, yeah, but it was so long ago. That doesn't necessarily matter because time is irrelevant in this part of our experience, which is the right brain. And usually why there is disorder and dysfunction going on is because it hasn't been run through the catalog of the left brain, of which is the hippocampus, particularly. So, yeah, that statistic doesn't quite hold up according to our model and our lived experience. So, leading cause of PTSD is sexual violence. Yes, a high percentage of people will develop symptoms with sexual violence. Now, I look at the symptoms of PTSD as being what defines dissociation, meaning that the symptoms of PTSD are basically outlining what PTSD or what dissociation does or is. So as we define PTSD, the definition of it really is dissociation because those symptoms of PTSD describe what dissociation is doing and how it does it. Why becomes important to ask because it may be trying to heal itself, but come up against some type of existential barrier, usually social, that doesn't allow the healing to be completed. Okay, 94% of victims during the first 2 weeks after their traumatic experience. Okay, so technically that's not PTSD because PTSD can't be diagnosed until 30 days after a month of the same symptoms persisting. So within the first 2 weeks would be a acute stress disorder and not PTSD. So These statistics are not panning out in my mind. All right, so most prevalent among adults ages between 45 to 49 with 92%. Huh. That's interesting. Why are there American adults between the age of 45 to 49? A 4-year gap in the middle of your life? And so, or that's when people actually start recognizing that their stuff is there and the dissociative barrier has worn off and thinned, and the past starts becoming, or the present starts becoming aware of the past, or the past becomes so loud that the present can actually recognize it. Women tend to, yeah, that one's weird to me too. I don't know. 45 to 49. I'm about to be 45. And I'm pretty sure I've had some trauma and it's most prevalent in the next 4 years. All right, bring it on. I guess. I mean, and then like, yeah, the types of PTSD, and my clinical experience is that more often than not, PTSD is really developmental trauma, meaning that um, more often than not, people's bigger issues with what has happened to them, the events they somehow can understand, what they often don't accept, or what they don't or they can't deal with, is really the relational impact of like what did happen or didn't happen, support, how they did it, and stuff like that. And so the more developmental relational things is usually what people are really struggling with. Yeah, yeah, and then men compared to women, like I think just men suppress it, and again, this like 10%, under 10%. So the WHO is usually what I've been quoting as, people will develop PTSD after a given event will be from 10 to 15%. The WHO, I think that was in like 2010. And so 10% after a given event, that means 90% of people figure the way through it. And how they figure their way through it is with dissociative means. So women will typically express their discomfort and their issue with whatever is going on with them symptom wise with PTSD. Men, maybe they don't. So I think women are more likely to seek help where or men are not. So that adds up. But this 10% or under 10% of people develop PTSD and 95% of people don't. Well, if 95% of people from the ACE study experience trauma, and then 95% of people are able to heal from it, then the numbers don't add up, in the sense that the dissociative feature in between, why those two things are happening, people are able to move forward, but that doesn't mean that healing has happened. That's the rub here, that people who are admitting that they are having symptoms are going to be the ones who report those symptoms. Well, one statistic I agree with, that more women in the military have PTSD. The actual numbers don't necessarily, I'm not going to argue those, but like, yeah, that one's pretty obvious. Yeah, veterans experience PTSD, but it's still a lower number, 25%. 90% of us have had trauma from childhood. So, um, yeah, 17.2 veterans die of suicide every day, being every 22 minutes. Um, and first responders, 3 out of 10, 30%. Um, 6 weeks of CBT can help ease symptom severity. Sure. Um, oh, yes, I'm still here. And then people who use cannabis for their symptoms are 2.5 times more likely to recover from this condition. Kind of like that statistic. Um, because it offers uh, growing support internally, and helps abate the symptoms. I also would argue that it creates a dual attention state in which people can probably heal the trauma from that. And I have a bigger concern that people may be more healed than they know. And that is a thing that I would like to study. So here's another way of looking at the different symptoms. So as I was saying, the reality of PTSD symptoms is that it's really dissociation. So increased mood and cognitive symptoms, the talking in your head, the emotional dysregulation, increased arousal symptoms. You are hypervigilant. You can also be hypovigilant, meaning you're shut down. And that can be more of a dissociative shutdown type of thing. So you may not be quick to anger. However, during your lull periods, and this is why bipolar is often diagnosed, too often, in my opinion, and the nervousness and the anxiety that people feel in the arousal state, the opposite of depression and stuff like that, is captured in hypo. But you're still going to be able to trigger something deep within people. So you're still going to see anger. It's just a matter of a person has a disposition of being in a calmer state or like a numb state versus a hypervigilant. Think of it like a bunny rabbit, like always looking around, versus like law. So avoidance symptoms could be seeking safety as well, and re-experiencing, reliving. This is, I think, a hallmark of dissociation. These types of things here. So there's another way of looking at it. So hopefully this is a helpful little clip here. I don't think there's much more I really wanted to say about that other than just capture that. But yeah, the theory, one more thing with the theory that I've really been kind of going with, or at least hypothesis, I guess, is that if 90% of us have experienced trauma in childhood and that 10% of us will develop PTSD, so that 10% plus the 90%, not necessarily plus, but like it completes the circle there, that like 90 and 10 and 10 and 90. The dissociative feature that would allow people to think that they have healed and would not be able to report on a questionnaire, then they would not be reporting accurately. And if there's a delayed onset, if there is, healing happening in dissociation, then it's a whole nother different story, of which is what I'm kind of chasing right now, is that the dissociative features seem to be able to create dual attention. It has to do with the opioid system, of which produces that dual attention, through the use of the opioid system, in which People can feel numb, but they could also feel like out of body and in experiencing. And in that, it becomes that dual attention state that a person can do the healing of, which we know from therapies is somewhat required to be able to access the state shift in consciousness awareness, to be able to do kind of reach behind and into the amygdala and pull out the experience, or having that experience be expressed and have it find its resolve, like the body pushing out a splinter. So that's about that. Thank you.